Wind turbines. They are reshaping entire landscapes. So in this video, I'm going to count down 15 giant wind turbine fields that are so big and orderly, they kind of look like mechanical forests. Let's start with number 15, the Horse Hollow Wind Energy Center. Located in Taylor and Nolan counties in central Texas, the Horse Hollow Wind Energy Center is one of the largest and most recognizable wind farms. It was completed in 2006. It covers roughly 47,000 acres across open ranch land, and it features more than 420 wind turbines. They've got a combined capacity of around 735 megawatts. That's enough to supply power to over 200,000 homes under ideal conditions. The project was first developed by NextEra Energy Resources. They're one of the biggest energy companies in North America. Turbines at Horse Hollow range between 1.5 to 2.3 megawatts each, and they were built by GE Energy and Siemens. What makes it stand out visually is the size of it. I mean, the rows of turbines stretch for miles across this terrain. It creates the impression of an endless metallic forest when viewed from above. Each tower stands about 260 feet tall with blades that reach nearly 130 feet. Now, despite the massive footprint though, the project has coexisted with local cattle ranching and farming, and the turbines occupy only a small fraction of the total land area. But while the site has been operating for nearly 2 decades, it's a symbol of the early large-scale push into wind energy in the U.S. It shows that privately financed utility-scale wind power could be both technically and commercially viable. Today, though, Horse Hollow continues to supply renewable power to the Texas grid. It's maintained by crews that are constantly monitoring turbine performance and the weather conditions to make sure that it's optimized properly. Number 14, the Gansu Wind Farm. The Gansu Wind Farm. It's also known as the Jiquan Wind Power Base. This is an ambitious renewable energy project. This is located in China's Gansu province near the edge of the Gobi Desert. It was designed originally to reach a staggering capacity of over 20 gigawatts, making it by far the largest wind power installation in the world. Construction began in 2009 as part of China's broader push to shift away from coal and expand into renewable energy. By 2025, the site had already surpassed 10 gigawatts of installed capacity. This wind farm is spread over a huge desert region, with the arrays of turbines that stretch across the low plateaus and sandy plains where the strong wind blows almost year-round. The scale of this place is pretty difficult to even comprehend. It covers multiple counties and it's connected to the grid through ultra-high voltage transmission lines that send the electricity hundreds of miles. But the project's also faced some challenges. Early phases struggled with curtailment. That's a situation where power couldn't be transmitted due to limited grid capacity, and leading to periods where turbines had to be shut down despite available wind. Since then, the Chinese government has expanded transmission lines to better integrate its output into the national grid. But despite all the logistical issues, the wind farm is a centerpiece of their renewable strategy. It shows the country's commitment to scaling up wind power faster than any other nation on Earth, and it shows how technology and government policy can combine to transform entire landscapes into energy ecosystems. Number 13, the Shepherd's Flat Wind Farm. Located in north-central Oregon, across the Gilliam and Morrow counties, Shepherd's Flat Wind Farm is an area that's known for steady winds and moving through the Columbia Plateau. This project was constructed between 2009 and 2012, and it's one of the largest land-based wind farms in the world. It's got an installed capacity of about 845 megawatts and consists of 338 turbines spread over roughly 30 square miles of open farm. The project uses General Electric 2.5 megawatt turbines that are each mounted on towers about 80 meters tall. This wind farm was one of the first in the U.S. to receive partial loan guarantees from the U.S. Department of Energy. Power from this farm is sold under long-term contracts to Southern California Edison, and despite the site being hundreds of miles away. Now, visually, it's pretty cool because of its uniform layout. The turbines are arranged in these long, evenly spaced lines that follow the contours of wheat fields and rolling hills. And from the ground level, the towers appear at regular intervals on the horizon. And while aerial views reveal an orderly grid, farming does continue beneath and around the turbines, with access roads and turbine pads occupying only a small portion of the total acreage. And operational data shows the sites benefit from consistent wind here, particularly during spring and nighttime hours. And since entering full operation, Shepherd's Flat has played a role in demonstrating how very large wind projects like this can integrate into rural economies, while also supplying power to distant urban markets. Number 12. The Roscoe Wind Farm. Located near the town of Roscoe in Nolan and Mitchell counties in West Texas, the Roscoe Wind Farm was completed in phases between 2007 and 2009. It was briefly the largest wind farm in the world at the time, with a total capacity of about 780 megawatts. The site includes 627 wind turbines supplied by multiple manufacturers, including GE, Siemens, Mitsubishi, and even Vestas. The location here was chosen due to the strong wind, of course, and persistent wind that sweep across the flat plains of West Texas. These conditions allow the turbines to operate at a high capacity, compared to many other regions in the U.S. The turbines extend in every direction across the landscape, with no single vantage point capturing the entire site. Instead, the wind farm appears to continue on endlessly. But despite the scale, the landowners continue to use the area for cattle grazing and other agricultural activities. This wind farm feeds power directly into the Texas ERCOT grid, and while Roscoe has since been surpassed by newer projects in size, it's a landmark in wind energy development. It showed that extremely large, multi-manufacturer wind installations could be built quickly and operate reliably, helping to accelerate the broader adoption of wind power across Texas and beyond. Number 11. The Markbygden Wind Farm. Located in northern Sweden near the town of Pieta in Norrbotten County, the Markbygden Wind Farm is one of the largest onshore wind power developments in Europe. When fully completed, it's planned to reach an installed capacity of up to 4 gigawatts, making it one of the largest wind projects in the world by total output. Construction began in the early 2010s, with the first major phase known as the Markbygden ETT becoming operational in 2021. That phase alone includes 179 turbines with a combined capacity of approximately 650 megawatts. These turbines are among the tallest used in Europe, with tip heights exceeding 200 meters, allowing them to capture stronger and more consistent winds above the tree line. This site was selected after a long-term wind measurement confirmed that northern Sweden's inland plateau experiences stable wind conditions, particularly during the winter months when electricity demand is highest. Power generated here is delivered into Sweden's national grid and is also contracted large industrial users under long-term power purchase agreements. Visually, though, it stands out because of its scale and its setting. The turbines arrive above the dense boreal forest, with access roads cutting straight lines through the trees. From an elevated viewpoint or satellite imagery, the towers appear in ordered rows that contrast sharply with the surrounding wilderness. Environmental monitoring continues throughout construction and operation, and they're focusing on wildlife movement and land use impact. Markbygden represents a major shift in European wind development towards fewer but significantly larger projects designed to supply industrial-scale renewable electricity rather than localized generation. Number 10. The Jaisalmer Wind Park. Located in the Thar Desert region of Rajasthan, the Jaisalmer Wind Park in western India is the largest wind energy installation in the country and one of the largest in Asia. It's got an installed capacity exceeding 1,600 megawatts. Development of this park began in the early 2000s, and it's continued in stages for more than a decade. Turbines here are distributed across a wide desert landscape near the town of Jaisalmer, where strong seasonal winds are blowing across the open terrain with minimal obstructions. Individual turbines vary in capacity depending on the phase, reflecting the evolution of the turbine technology over this time. And unlike many wind farms built on agricultural land, this one occupies sparsely populated desert areas. This has allowed the installation to expand outward rather than upward, resulting in turbines that are spread across long distances rather than concentrated in tight clusters. From the ground, the towers appear scattered across the sand and scrub, but from the aerial views they form broad repeating patterns. The electricity generated here feeds into Rajasthan's national grid, and it supports both urban demand and industrial use. And of course, wind production peaks during the monsoon season, when strong winds coincide with high electricity consumption. But the wind park's not only important for its size, but also for its role in establishing wind power as a major component of India's energy mix. It showed that large-scale wind generation could operate reliably in desert environments, and it helped accelerate renewable development across multiple Indian states. Number 9. The Fontanele Wind Farm. Located in the Dobrogea region of southeastern Romania, between the villages of Fontanele and Cougelac, not far from the Black Sea coast, is the largest onshore wind farm in Europe by installed capacity. Construction took place between 2009 and 12, resulting in a total capacity of about 600 megawatts generated by 240 turbines. The project was developed by ČEZ Group, the Czech Republic's state-controlled energy company, and all the turbines on site are General Electric 2.5 megawatt models mounted on towers roughly 100 meters tall, with blade tip heights approaching 150 meters. At the time of construction, this did represent one of the largest single commitments to wind power in Eastern Europe. Dobrogea was selected after extensive wind assessments confirmed that the region experiences some of the strongest winds in Romania. Air currents from the Black Sea move inland across this flat open terrain and creates favorable conditions for utility-scale wind generation. The turbines are arranged in long, orderly lines across the farmland and open fields, connected by a network of gravel service roads and electrical substations. Hundreds of turbines rise above the landscape, evenly spaced and aligned to maximize their wind capture, and from elevated viewpoints or satellite imagery, the uniformity of the layout becomes clear, with rows of towers stretching towards the horizon. The electricity generated feeds into Romania's national transmission system, and it supplies both domestic consumption and regional exports. During periods of strong wind, the site can account for a significant share of their total electricity production. However, output varies depending on weather condition, and like all wind projects, it requires balancing with other generation sources. This farm played a major role in transforming Romania into one of Eastern Europe's leading producers of wind energy. It also showed that at very large centralized wind projects, they could be successfully integrated into a national grid that had previously relied heavily on fossil fuels and hydropower. More than a decade after completion, it's a landmark example of large-scale onshore wind development in Europe. Number 8. The Whitley Wind Farm. Located just south of Glasgow in Scotland is the Whitley Wind Farm. It's the largest onshore wind farm in the UK and one of the largest in Europe. Construction began in 2007, with multiple expansion phases completed by 2013. The site now has an installed capacity of about 539 megawatts, generated by 215 wind turbines. The turbines at Whitley vary in size depending on the phase in which they were installed, with capacities ranging from 2 to 3 megawatts. The wind farm occupies an upland plateau characterized by moorland, peat bogs, and forestry plantations, which is an environment well suited to capturing strong and frequent winds from the Atlantic. Now, the visual impact is shaped by its scale and the terrain it sits in. The turbines are spread across more than 55 square kilometers, positioned along ridges and high open ground. From ground level, though, the individual clusters dominate the skyline, while from aerial views the full extent becomes apparent, long lines of towers arranged across the rolling hills. Whitley was designed with public access in mind. The site includes an extensive network of walking and cycling paths, as well as a visitor center that explains how wind power works and how electricity is transmitted to homes and businesses. That electricity from Whitley is fed into Scotland's high-voltage transmission network, which does contribute to their renewable energy targets. The output fluctuates with the wind conditions, of course, but the site ranks among the highest-producing onshore wind farms in the UK. Whitley's success often demonstrated that large wind farms could operate reliably and integrate into sensitive landscapes with careful planning, and maybe even coexist with recreation and conservation efforts. And as a result, it's one of the most studied and visited wind energy sites in Europe. Moving on to number 7, the MacArthur Wind Farm. Located in southwestern Victoria, Australia, the MacArthur Wind Farm near the towns of MacArthur and Penhurst is the largest onshore wind farm ever built in the Southern Hemisphere. Construction began in 2011 and was completed by 2013, resulting in a total capacity of 420 megawatts generated by 140 wind turbines. All turbines here are Vesta V112 models, each rated at 3 megawatts. These turbines are mounted on towers about 85 meters tall, with blade tips reaching more than 140 meters above the ground. The site was selected after extensive studies confirmed that the region does experience strong and reliable wind driven by weather systems moving across the Southern Ocean. The access roads and electrical infrastructure here were integrated to minimize any disruption to existing land, and from ground level the turbines appear spaced at regular intervals across open fields. From elevated viewpoints or aerial imagery, their full arrangement becomes clear, long repeating lines of towers stretching gently across rolling terrain. Since entering operation, the site has consistently ranked among Australia's highest producing wind farms. The output varies, of course, with the weather, but the region's strong wind has helped deliver relatively high capacity factors compared to many other Australian sites. MacArthur's played a role in demonstrating that very large wind projects like this could be built and operated reliably in Australia, and it did set a benchmark for turbine size and project scale. More than a decade after completion, it remains as a reference point for large-scale onshore wind development across the southern hemisphere. Number 6. The Muppandal Wind Farm. Located near the village of Muppandal, in the district of Tamil Nadu at the southern tip of India, is a wind farm that's one of the largest onshore wind power clusters in the world. With an installed capacity exceeding 1,500 megawatts, when multiple connection installations in the region are included, the development began in the 1990s and expanded steadily over several decades as wind technology improved. The site benefits from a unique geographic feature, a natural gap in the western Ghats mountain range. This pass funnels strong seasonal winds from the Arabian Sea inland, particularly during the southwest monsoons, and because of those conditions, the area was identified early as one of India's most promising wind energy zones. Unlike many single-developer wind farms, Muppandal consists of turbines installed by numerous companies, Suzlon, Vestas, Gamsia, and owned by a mixture of private firms and utilities. The turbine sizes vary, of course, reflecting the different generations of technology, but together they form a dense and expansive wind landscape. The turbines occupy nearly every suitable ridge and open stretch of land, creating an almost continuous field of rotating towers. From a distance, it looks like a huge mechanical forest covering the horizon, with turbines rising above the village's roads and agricultural land. Electricity generated here feeds into Tamil Nadu's power grid and plays a role in meeting regional demand, especially during peak wind season. Muppandal is historically significant as one of the earliest examples of large-scale wind development in Asia. Its long, incremental growth shows how favorable geography and sustained investment can transform an entire region into a major renewable energy hub over time. Number 5. The London Array. One of the most influential offshore wind farms ever constructed, and remains a defining example of how wind energy can scale to industrial levels at sea, the London Array is located in the outer Thames estuary, roughly 20 kilometers off the coasts of Kent and Essex. Fully commissioned in 2013, the project has a capacity of 630 megawatts generated by 175 Siemens wind turbines. At the time of completion, it was the largest offshore wind farm in the world. That was a title it held for several years before being surpassed by newer projects. Development began in the early 2000s as part of the UK's effort to reduce carbon emissions and diversify its energy. Construction took place in challenging conditions. It required specialized vessels, seabed surveys, and precise marine engineering, so each turbine's mounted on a steel monopile foundation driven deep into the seabed. The turbines themselves are Siemens models, each rated at 3.6 megawatts. They stand about 147 meters tall from sea level to blade tip, with a rotor diameter of about 120 meters. Spacing between the turbines was calculated to reduce any wake interference while also maximizing the available lease area. The result is a huge orderly grid of turbines extending across more than 100 square kilometers of open water. From an aerial or satellite perspective, the turbines appear like endless rows of identical white structures emerging from the water. Unlike land-based wind farms that follow terrain, the London Array's layout emphasizes its spacing, which gives it a distinctly engineered appearance. On clear days, the turbines are visible from parts of the coast. They appear as distant, uniform skyline on the horizon. The project did require some extensive environmental monitoring. Prior to construction, studies were conducted on seabirds, marine mammals, and fish populations. Monitoring continued during and after installation to assess any long-term impact. And while offshore wind development inevitably alters local marine environments, studies around the London Array have contributed valuable data to inform later offshore wind projects across Europe. Although plans originally existed to expand the London Array further, a second phase was ultimately cancelled due to concerns about potential impact on bird populations. Despite this, though, the existing installation is one of the most productive and well-known wind farms in the world. More than a decade after becoming operational, the London Array continues to symbolize the transition from experimental offshore wind to large-scale utility-grade renewable. It shows that offshore wind farms can be built at an unprecedented scale and operate reliably in a harsh marine environment. Number 4. The Dogger Bank Wind Farm. So this one represents the next evolutionary step in offshore wind energy, both in scale and ambition. It's located in the North Sea. The Dogger Bank wind farm is more than 130 kilometers off the northeast coast of England. When fully completed, it's expected to have a total capacity of about 3.6 gigawatts. That's enough to supply electricity to millions of homes in the UK. The project's being developed in phases known as Dogger Bank A, B, and C. Construction began in the early 2020s with full completion expected later in the decade. Water depths in the area are relatively shallow for offshore wind, typically around 20 to 35 meters, and that makes it suitable for fixed-bottom turbine foundations despite the distance from shore. Dogger Bank uses GE turbines, among the largest wind turbines ever deployed. Each one has a capacity of up to 13 megawatts, with rotor diameters exceeding 220 meters and blade tip heights approaching 260 meters above sea level. These turbines are so large that a single rotation of the blades can generate enough electricity to power a typical UK home for more than a day. Hundreds of these turbines are arranged across a huge section of open sea, forming a geometric pattern that stretched far beyond the horizon. From satellite imagery, the site appears like a massive grid of evenly spaced points in the water, which shows the precision required to construct and operate infrastructure like this. Electricity is transmitted to shore using high-voltage direct current systems, a technology that was chosen to reduce energy loss over long distance. Offshore converter platforms collect power from the multiple turbines before sending it through subsea cables to the onshore converter stations. Specialized installation vessels were required to transport and erect the turbine components, some of which are among the largest single pieces of equipment ever moved at sea. Maintenance crews operate from offshore service vessels and helicopters. They work in narrow weather windows that are dictated by the North Sea. Extensive surveys were conducted in the area to assess any potential impact on marine life and seabirds. Mitigation measures include careful scheduling of construction activities and ongoing monitoring to study any long-term effects. As one of the largest offshore wind projects ever attempted, Dogger Bank has become a major reference point for regulators and developers worldwide. Dogger Bank marks a shift towards fewer but vastly larger offshore wind farms designed to function as a major power plant rather than supplemental energy sources. Once fully operational, Dogger Bank is expected to play a role in the UK's renewable energy strategy and serve as a model for future offshore developments. Number 3. The Hornsea Wind Farm. Located in the North Sea off the coast of Yorkshire in England, the Hornsea Wind Farm is being built in multiple phases, and taken together, it represents the largest offshore wind complex in the world. Hornsea 1 became fully operational in 2020 with an installed capacity of 1.2 gigawatts, followed by Hornsea 2 in 2022 with a capacity of about 1.3 gigawatts. Additional phases are still planned or under development, which will further increase the total output of the zone. The project was developed by Ørsted, a company that has played a central role in the global expansion of offshore wind. Hornsea 1 alone consists of 174 Siemens turbines, each rated at 7 megawatts. Hornsea 2 uses larger 8.4 megawatt turbines. These turbines stand well over 190 meters from sea level to blade tip, with rotor diameters exceeding 150 meters. The Hornsea location was chosen because of the strong, consistent wind and suitable seabed. The site is far offshore, more than 120 kilometers from the coast in some areas. It makes it one of the most distant wind farms from land ever constructed. From a visual and structural standpoint, it strongly fits the idea of a mechanical forest. Hundreds of turbines are arranged across an enormous section of open sea, aligned in grids that extend beyond the horizon. In imagery, the turbines appear like a dense, repeating pattern of white points that show the scale and order of the installation. Crews here have to use vessels and helicopters to access the turbines, while advanced monitoring systems are tracking performance in real time. The maintenance schedules are planned around the weather, which can be pretty harsh in the North Sea, especially during the winter. Hornsea has had a major impact on the UK's energy system. In times of strong wind, Hornsea 1 alone can supply electricity to well over 1 million homes. So this project's shown that offshore wind can function as a core component of national power generation rather than a supplementary source. Number 2. The Walney Extension Wind Farm. Off the northwest coast of England, near Cumbria and Lancashire, the Walney Extension Wind Farm is a major wind installation located in the Irish Sea. It represents a stage of evolution in offshore wind, sitting at the transition point between early large-scale projects and the next gen of ultra-large developments. When it was fully commissioned in 2018, the Walney Extension became the largest wind farm in the world with a total capacity of 659 megawatts. Although it's since been surpassed by newer projects, it's one of the most important offshore wind farms ever built. The Walney Extension is an expansion of the original Walney wind farm, which itself was constructed in phases beginning in 2010. The project was developed by Ørsted, one of the global leaders in offshore wind energy, as part of the United Kingdom's broader strategy. The wind farm consists of 87 turbines supplied by two manufacturers, MHI Vestas and Siemens Gamesa. The turbine capacities range between 7 to 8 megawatts, which at the time of installation placed them among the most powerful turbines in commercial operation. Each one rises more than 190 meters above sea level to the tip of its blades, with the rotor diameter exceeding 160 meters. The turbines are mounted on steel monopile foundations that are driven deep, with water depths of up to 56 meters here. This depth was considered challenging when the project was planned, as many earlier offshore wind farms were located in shallower coastal waters. The turbines are arranged in long, highly regular rows across open sea, with precise spacing determined by wind modeling and wake effect analysis. And from above, it appears like a rigid grid imposed on the water's surface. Maintenance is equally demanding here. Technicians access turbines using service vessels and, in some cases, helicopters. Routines, inspections, blade repairs, and component replacements are planned around the weather to ensure safe access. From a broader industry perspective, the Walney Extension marked an important milestone. It showed that offshore wind farms could be built at greater distances from shore and in deeper water with larger turbines. This project has helped validate the economic case for scaling up offshore wind, showing that higher upfront costs could be offset by greater energy production and improved efficiency. Lessons learned from Walney Extension directly influenced the design and execution of later projects like Hornsea and Dogger Bank. But viewed as part of a broader seascape, the Walney Extension shows the image of offshore wind as an industrial landscape rather than a collection of isolated machines. In this sense, the Walney Extension's not only a power plant, but a visual symbol of how renewable energy infrastructure is reshaping both coastlines and the open oceans in the modern era. Number 1. The North Sea Offshore Wind Zone. The North Sea Offshore Wind Zone is not a single wind farm, but a huge interconnected landscape of wind energy infrastructure that collectively represents the largest concentration of wind turbines on the planet. Spanning the territorial waters and exclusive economic zones of the United Kingdom, Denmark, Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, Norway, this North Sea has become the epicenter of global offshore wind development. The transformation of the North Sea into a wind energy hub didn't happen quickly. Early offshore wind experiments began in the 1990s when small pilot projects tested whether turbines could survive corrosive saltwater. Over time, engineering advances, improved materials, and better understanding of offshore conditions allowed developers to push farther from land and build much larger projects. By the 2010s, the North Sea had emerged as the ideal environment for large-scale offshore wind due to its strong, consistent winds. Individual projects here like Hornsea, Dogger Bank, the London Array, Walney Extension, Borssele, and Gemini are massive in their own right, but together they form an almost continuous band of wind infrastructure. From above, these dots align into grids, arcs, and long corridors shaped by lease boundaries, shipping lanes, and prevailing wind directions. The result is a landscape or seascape that looks engineered rather than natural. It's a deliberate overlay of industrial geometry imposed into an open marine environment. The turbines themselves here are among the largest moving machines ever built. The modern North Sea offshore turbines typically range from 8 to over 14 megawatts per unit, with rotor diameters exceeding 200 meters and blade tip heights surpassing 260 meters above sea level. Each turbine stands taller than most skyscrapers when measured from seabed to the blade tip at its highest point. The blades alone can be longer than a football field, sweeping enormous areas of air with each rotation. Foundations vary depending on the water depth and subsea conditions. In shallower areas, steel monopiles are driven deep into the bed using massive hydraulic hammers, and in deeper, more complex conditions, jacket foundations or gravity-based structures are used instead. All the electricity generated by these wind farms is transmitted to shore through an extensive network of subsea cables. Early projects used alternating current systems, but as distances increased, the high-voltage direct current technology became essential to reduce transmission losses. Offshore substations, too, collect power from dozens of turbines and convert it for long-distance transmission. In some cases, energy hubs are being planned or constructed, centralized offshore platforms that connect multiple wind farms and distribute electricity to several countries. The North Sea's role as a wind energy hub is also shaped by geopolitics and policy. European governments have set ambitious renewable energy targets, and offshore wind is a cornerstone of those plans. Cooperation between countries has increased as shared infrastructure becomes more common. The cross-border transmission links how electricity generated in one nation's waters to be used in another, which enhances energy security for the countries and reduces reliance on fossil fuel imports. Technological innovation, too, continues to push boundaries. Turbines are growing larger, installation methods are becoming more efficient, and digital monitoring systems are improving their reliability. Floating wind technology, which allows turbines to be installed in deeper water, is being tested and could eventually expand the wind development beyond the continental shelf. If successful, this would further increase the size and influence of the North Sea wind zone. From an energy perspective, this offshore wind zone is representing a shift in how electricity is generated and delivered. Instead of centralized fossil fuel plants located near cities or fuel sources, power is now being produced far offshore and transmitted over long distances. This requires new approaches to grid management, storage, and demand balancing. Offshore wind is most productive during windy periods, which does often coincide with colder weather and higher energy demand in northern Europe. But despite the scale, the North Sea offshore wind zone is still growing. Governments and developers continue to announce new projects and expansions, and if these plans are realized, the mechanical forest will become even denser and more extensive. The North Sea offshore wind zone stands apart from all the other wind installations due to its size and density. Viewed from above, it's an engineered forest of steel covering the sea with repeating patterns that reflect decades of technological progress. As it continues to expand globally, the North Sea remains the clearest and most fully realized example of what truly an industrial-scale wind energy ecosystem really looks like.